Hello, welcome to another episode of IGN House Call. It's a show where we really get to talk about our feelings because we don't get to do much of that at this moment. I am half of your host. I am Amran, and with me is Dale. And Dale, why don't you tell the people watching at home who we have here with us today?
Right. Hi. So we have a very special guest on our show. You might know him as the leader of Avalanche, Barret Wallace. But of course, we know him here as John Bentley. John?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? That's fun. That was a good intro. You might know him as the leader of Avalanche. I love that. That's awesome.
You might actually know him as the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, Nick Fury.
There you go.
That's true. That's true. I am Iron Man. You think you're the only superhero in town, Stark? Yeah, that's him.
Sweet.
That's him.
Nice.
Little sound bites.
Of course, we've done our research, so we know a lot. But for those at home who are new to the world of voice acting or never really tried to put a face to the voice that they're listening to, why don't you tell a bit about yourself to people watching right now?
My name's John Bentley. I grew up in Chicago. Was born and raised in Chicago by two lovely parents. My mom was a school teacher. My dad worked at a steel mill. My mom taught me to read at a very, very young age. So I remember back in the day, I would say, "Hey, Mom, what is this? Hey, Mom, what is this?" And, by the time I was 3 or 4 years old, she got tired of me asking. And she said, "Look it up." I was like, "What do you mean, look it up?" And she's like, "I need to teach you how to read." So she started teaching me how to read. I think at 3 or 4, by 5, I was reading crazy stuff. And I think by the age of 9 or 8, I had finished reading the Iliad, the Odyssey, all of these Greek and Roman mythology, and several other books, because she always said, "Hey, go look it up. We got 2 sets of encyclopedias. We have dictionaries all over the house. You just go look it up. You know how to read now." And so I learned how to read at a young age and developed a thirst for more knowledge and for arts and for different things. My dad was an eclectic with music, so I was brought up in the hood with a lot of different diversity as far as the arts. So that's me. And now I'm working, and I'd say I went to school at the University of Minnesota. Stayed there for 9 years, got married, and then moved to California. I'd already been to New York to see what that was like because I was from Chicago. I kind of saw what that was like. And it was pretty much a theater mindset back then. And now that I'm in California, it's more television, commercials, on camera, on film, voiceover stuff. So that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. So, how did you get your major start in voice acting?
Wow. Let's see. So when I was in Minnesota, I played football for the university. And when you play for the NCAA, you're not really allowed to work because you're on scholarship. They basically own you as a player.
Right.
Things are changing now, which is pretty cool for the students that are coming up. But once I was able to work after I graduated, I started working for a non-union talent agent, and I was able to do what we call industrials. So it would be my voice explaining to in-house workers what the thermocouple did and this and these different little technical aspects. And then it got to a point where I had an ear prompter. So I would record onto a little tape, put it in my pocket, have a wireless ear prompter, and push play. And I had to say what I had recorded. So basically I was talking behind the beat. So if I said, "Update Apple ID settings," then you would hear, "Update Apple ID settings." And you would hear me, walking and talking and doing the whole thing. So then, but as a kid, and as a young adult, I used to always imitate people. We would go to the club and I would see people and say, "Hey, I bet you he talks like this." And I would give him a voice. I'd be way away from everybody so no one would hear me doing it. And I said, here's a conversation that they may have. So I always played around with voice stuff. But then when I realized that, I was in Minnesota and someone said, hey, you can do this character and we'll just do your voice, and you come up with a funny voice and we'll match the voice to the flaps that we create in the character, like Japanese anime. And I'm like, okay, so that's when I went, oh, this is pretty cool. And I was an only child. So for me, playing video games was like, oh, and then all of a sudden they were like, hey man, you can do video games like that too. And I went, what? So when I was in California, I had the opportunity to do Dead Space, and Dead Space originally was a comic book. And so I got to play a character, and all it was a still shot, and they would move it, or they'd show the effect of it in the comic book. And so I got to do that, and I went, wow, this is really cool. And then someone said, hey man, we really like what you did in that. Can you come out and do this? And you have to match flaps. So then I had to get trained to do Japanese anime. So it just went on and on and on. But voice 1, 2, 3 is kind of how I got started with being solid in California. Once I did a job here, they heard my voice there, and someone from California said, hey, we have a studio in Santa Monica, so come out and just do what you just did here. I went, oh, okay. And that's kind of when the ball started rolling for all of this. That was back in the day.
Sweet. And since then, you've sort of built a huge list of characters that you've done voices for.
Yeah, I mean, some of the characters, like Nick Fury sounded like one of my uncles. So, Samuel Jackson, I've always looked up to. He is just the bomb. He is, I kind of go by his motto about longevity in work. How do you create work for a long period of time and not just be a one-hit wonder? Or how, he's created a body of work for such a long period of time, and he's done different things with his characters. Yes, there are certain things that he does that are his trademark, and they come into play with most of his characters, as most actors have. But that cat he's a lesson in longevity in the business. So I love him. I hope to get to meet him one day. But my uncle sounds a lot like Sam Jackson. So I grew up hearing that voice in my youth. So it was kind of like, okay, if I can do Uncle John, then I'll be able to do this, and this. So that's pretty much how I came up with being able to lock in that character. But there's different characters that you kind of, because I would give people voices, and as a kid sit in front of a mirror and make faces and come up with different voices, then I'd be able to do that. Just different,
And speaking of characters that you voiced, Barret, one of your most recent work, you mentioned in a tweet before that you had played FF7 a long time ago.
The original.
The original. How did it feel to play Barret in the remake? And also, when you used to play it, back in the days, did you actually do his voice while playing the game?
So both questions. It was surreal to play a character that I grew up going, wow, this is awesome, because the Final Fantasy VII, the original game, I was my first RPG. I didn't like RPG games until I played Final Fantasy, and then wait a minute, there's a 3-disc set of this unbelievable world that you enter into. Oh my gosh, this is like Narnia when I read this back in the day. So it's like, this is great. Oh my goodness, there's a black leader, a black man. Oh my gosh, he's got a gun for an arm. That's pretty cool. Oh wow, he's he doesn't die. Oh my gosh. And so it was just this fascinating thing to then have an opportunity years later as a grown man with kids to play Barret, who I played when I was a kid. So it was pretty awesome for me to be able to do that. And it was very overwhelming because I wanted to get it right. I wanted to justify the character and not play him as a stereotype or a caricature. So even playing it now, it's kind of surreal. I'll play it and I'm like, I'll hear my voice and go, oh yeah, I did this. Okay. It's just, it's pretty surreal, but it's pretty awesome. I'll never forget, my son came in when I was playing the game, and he said, Dad, why aren't you playing? I was like, I am playing. He's like, no, you're not moving. I've been standing here watching. I said, I'm so sorry, son. I'm just looking at all the stuff around it. It's like beautiful how they did this. And then, are you hearing the music? And he's like, Dad, just play the game. I was like, all right, just move. We want to see your character. But so yeah, that was pretty special to be able to do it. So humbling is what the feeling is. Did I answer your question? I know you asked me two parts of that question.
Yeah, that was the second one was more or less like you saying that because you mentioned that you like to imitate people watching.
Oh,
them.
did I? Yes, I did actually. I was like, well, I think he sounds like this when I was younger. And then of course, he looked like Mr. T, and at the time, Mr. T was just the bomb, for me, like 18. So I was like, I wonder if he sounds like this. Hey, Hannibal. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna do him like that. And then I was like, well, maybe he sounds like this. So I would give him different voices when I played. But when you're reading that side scrolling back in the day, you're just trying to, okay, here's my information. Okay, now I gotta talk to Cloud. Now I gotta talk to Tifa. What's Aerith got to do with this? Oh, is that Sephiroth? What the hell? So it's completely different because you're just reading to progress the game, because that was a long game. But so it was different. But I did say, well, if I played him, I would do it like this, or if I think Barret sounds like this, and this is how I think Cloud sounds. So it was just different little things I would do, but not to the extent of which, oh wow, you got the job, you are going to play this character, and it's like you need to know this whole world. So it was very, very much more intense, but fun.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of which, so yeah, you've been the voice of Nick Fury, and even other superheroes like Black Panther, Luke Cage, and Fire Emblem from Tiger and Bunny, one of my favorite animes of all time.
That was bomb. I just heard that they're about to try to do another one.
Yeah, they're gonna do like a sequel.
Yeah,
some say a live action movie. I don't know.
I hope they ask us to. That's just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, go ahead. I interrupted your question. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's cool. So how does it feel like being the voices of these prominent Black superheroes? And do you feel responsible in inspiring the Black community all over the world?
Oh, it's huge. It's a huge responsibility. One, you don't want to represent yourself or your culture or your community in the negative light. And we already have so much negativity shined on us as African Americans in this country here in the U.S. But in my travels in different areas, I've seen that negative connotation is depicted in comic books and different drawings and different cartoons all over the world. And it's because of, the whole concept of slavery and racism and prejudice and stereotypes that were bred out of, hatred and anger and bigotry. So I don't want to portray any characters that bring any kind of negative light on my culture. I mean, I'm a grown man, I got a family. I just don't want to do that. And I find it a heavy responsibility to represent my culture the right way, and my race. It's a heavy thing, and that's why I was very cautious with how I portrayed Barret. I did not want him to be looked at as this big, angry brute of a Black man. I did not want him to come off as a stereotypical, in most people's eyes, and a lot of people, like I said, some of the depictions I've seen drawn and created, this angry Black man, and who just wants to shoot stuff up. Just didn't want him to come off that way. I wanted people to see the story arc. I wanted them to see the character arc. I wanted them to see that Barret was multifaceted. I wanted them to see that he was hardcore in the very beginning, and he was angry in the very, very beginning because he had, as a newcomer, he had to set the grounds for when Cloud comes in, because his other team is watching him. I wanted them to see how much he cared for the planet. I wanted them to see how much he cared for his team. I wanted the player to see his relationship with Marlene. I wanted all those different things. He had to have emotion, and it wasn't just geared towards anger. I wanted them to see Barret portrayed in the right light. So that was a heavy responsibility, and I think I got it right. I'm critical on myself all the time. I look at things, I'm like, oh, I could have done that different, or I could have done this different. And a lot of the work I've done, but I think we've done pretty good, considering some of the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of people. I think I always say out of the 250, great job, John, you did a great job. I may get 2 or 3 people that are haters and say, oh, this was really negative, and you did this, and you shouldn't have done this. I'm like, okay, I'll take the 2 or 3 out of the 250.
Well,
but then again, you can't please everybody, right?
That's true.
It's true. I do have to say that because I've finished the game, and I'm not just saying this because we're talking to you, but I did think you did a really good job. I played the original game and the remake at the same time, and you brought so much more to Barret's character than was seen in the OG, and it was amazing to see that you could actually feel his passion a lot more. Like the whole Avalanche and Mako being pulled out and damaging the environment. And these are things that weren't apparent in the OG as much, but it makes the cause a lot more relatable, I guess. Like, cool. You want to support Avalanche a lot more. It was great.
Cool, man. I really appreciate it. Because I know, some people is like, yeah, he's a eco-terrorist with a gun for an arm, and he's angry, and he's big, and he's mean. I'm like, okay, visually that is what you see. And if you played the original game, there's a lot of the words were just different at the time. So much is just PC is just different now. And I get why you see what you see, and a lot of people before the game was released saw the different clips that Square Enix put out, and they were very judgmental on a lot of our characters because all they saw was a clip. They didn't see the arc of the story. They didn't see what the scene was or what it represented. They just saw a clip, and they're like, well, this is this, and they shouldn't do this. And so everybody wants to be a critic. And I always laugh. My oldest son, I'll never forget when he first got his phone. He was able to text people, and he friends and cliques and classrooms, and went to school. And we got called into the office one day, and they're like, yo, your son is like texting crazy stuff to this kid, and he feels like he's being bullied. I'm like, my son? my son is not. My son is one of the quietest dudes in the world. And they showed me the text. I'm like, oh, this is stuff my son would never say in real life. But because he's behind a screen and a camera, and he's not going to be confronted, he's going to say all this crazy stuff and how he feels. And this is when he was much younger. And I went, wow, that's kind of what's going on with social media. People talk a lot of talk that they would never say to a person's face. And it's very interesting how society has gotten off that way. So, and it's okay to be angry and critical now. And it's like, you know what? If we flip that and we're positive and uplifting and edifying people, it would change a whole lot of mindsets. It would stop a whole lot of, personally, I think, anger. It would stop a lot of people feeling bad about themselves, which could possibly lead to them hurting themselves. It would stop a whole lot if we could just change it, flip it, and say something good about people. So, when people write me and say, hey man, great job as Barret, I always want to make sure I say, hey, thank you so much, and thank you for enjoying the game. Because you want to make sure you acknowledge the fact that something good is being done. The way we live right now all over the world, it's just not enough reports of people doing good things. Everything is dirty laundry. Everybody wants to hear bad stuff or negative stuff. I'm not that dude. I just want to bring a smile to people's faces and figure out how to make people find some kind of joy or some kind of hope, especially during times like this with this whole pandemic going on. You never know who you might touch and help as opposed to who you might touch and hurt.
Nice.
These are good words. And actually, on that note, what would you advise up-and-coming voice actors, especially those in our region in Southeast Asia who want to make it or who want to reach points milestones that you've reached?
I would try to find avenues, find areas in which that people are creating content. Whether if it's for, so the difference is that what do you want to go into? So many people say, hey, I want to be a voice actor. Okay, what do you want to do? What do you mean? I want to be a voice actor. Okay, what does that mean? What kind of voice acting do you want to do? And people don't understand. There's spokesperson, there's commercial, there's instruction, there's industrial, there is jingles, if you can sing. There are video games, there are independent video games, there are there's so many different genres within it. There's Japanese anime, there's other anime, there's so many different, what is it that you want to do? So when you figure out what it is, what category you want to go into, because in my opinion, I'm like, if you can do that one, then you'll be able to do the other ones. Once you get into that one that you think you can really do well, study it, find people who are doing it. Look online, there's so many resources right now. Find out what your favorite characters are. Can you imitate them? And if you could imitate them, how would you do it different? Get in front of a mirror. People laugh at this. Is an exercise I used to do. If you make certain faces, a different voice will come out. If you look at different characters, like if I'm talking to you like me, I'm talking to you like me. But if I start squinching up and talking to you like this, well, then I don't have access to all this other stuff, and then I might want to pitch it up like this and this, So find out different ways to create different vocal tones, or it might be vocal patterns. You might talk a little different, and sometimes you may speak like a robot. I mean, it's so many different. I know I'm playing around, but that's what you do. You get in front of a mirror and you train your voice. You train your tool, your instrument, which is you, with what you have, and you try to match it up to what you think would be a good vocal character, or you draw your own content. There's so many artists out there, and they say, well, I think this is how this would talk. If I made this into a cartoon, this is how it would talk. It's so many different ways to do it. Let your mind just open up, create. And then if you're just starting out, it's going to be tough if you don't have an agent, so to speak. Everybody's like, oh, I need an agent. There are so many different sites that you can go to and say, hey, I'm going to spend $100 or $50. Here's my name. Here's my demo reel. Here's how I'm going to do it. You can hire me. And now it's like across the countries. It's not just, regions anymore. It's all over the world. This is my voice. I want to be on your project. I'm submitting my tape, which should have a lot of stuff on it, and I want to work for you. You know what I mean? So, and then all of a sudden, you start auditioning, and the auditioning process is part of your training. So it's not just, oh, I'm auditioning to get this job. No, you're going to audition a lot. I mean, the one thing as an actor, period, you have to learn how to deal with rejection. Because out of 9 jobs, you might get turned down 7 times. You might get turned down 8.5 times. You never know. But it just got to keep going. You got to have thick skin with it. And I would also suggest, don't be willing to compromise who you are as a human being just to get a job. Don't be willing to compromise who you are and do stupid stuff just to get a job. Don't do that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Just keep working hard at it and be able to say no to things too. Don't say, oh, I got this job, I got to do it. But they're asking you to play this crazy character, and if you've seen, he's got big lips, and he's all real. He's got this crazy look. He's the old Disney characters, and so that's going to embarrass you and your culture. Are you going to? Yeah, I'm not going to do that damn job. You know what I mean? So don't be willing to compromise your stand. First of all, you have to have a stand going into this. And it's best to have people who can come along and support you with what you do, and keep you accountable for what you do if you can't do it. So there's a lot of different little things you got to do, but if you want to just jump into it, see what it's like, try it out, but don't be willing to compromise. Make sure you study and figure out how to go about doing it, and go about doing it the right way. Because once again, like Sam Jackson has taught me and everything that he's done and some of the things he said, it's about longevity. So what, you get a job. After that job's done, then what? Always look ahead. Most people don't look ahead to, okay, I did this, how can that generate this? You know what I'm saying? they're satisfied with, hey, I did great on this and everybody loved me. Oh, I'm gonna go on Twitter. And they're get your ass in the studio and keep working. Keep studying. You know what I mean? It's great that you can go on and say hey to the fans and everything, and they appreciate you. But if you are driven by what people say, people will like you for 1 minute and can turn around and hate you in the next job you do. You can't be driven by that. You have to be motivated by your work and work hard at what you do. That answer it?
Yeah, wise words.
It's just
Nice.
the things I've learned. There's no need to not share the things that I've learned. I just don't want anybody to go the route the hard way or learn by default when you got folks that are willing to say, hey man, try this.
Nice. All right. So you've been doing this for quite a while. Are there?
Yeah.
Would you say there's a difference, like when you voice act for a video game, for an anime, and for like a cartoon? Like, what are the different challenges that you kind of face?
For me, the challenges are how much material do I have to study before I go in to do the actual job? So if I'm doing anime, I need to at least kind of know the character and the situation that I'm put in, the series, what it's about. So people laugh at me because they'll say, hey, you just got this job at such and such. And I'll say, hey, that's awesome. Can you send me some specs, or can you send me some information about the show? Can you send me a link so I'll know what the heck I'm doing? As opposed to some people, oh, that's great, I'll see you tomorrow. You go into a studio and you don't even get to see the character you're doing, because for me, I have to see visually who I'm playing. If it's somebody big, I have to play him big. If it's somebody fat, I have to play him with some girth to it. If it's somebody that's skinny, I have to make sure that I have to see how the character looks. I would love to see if it's animated, how he moves, or she in some cases, how they move. If I see that they lead with their head, then I'll know that they speak like this, and it's strained. If I see that they lead down here, I know that they kind of look at the world in a whole different output. It's kind of like Gollum is down here, and it's just like they don't care. So it's different things you have to study. And so for me, it's different, but it's a different study because you're talking about anime where you have to do flaps. So you're given these words and you have to put them in that mouth. And if there's a lot of words and it doesn't fit in that mouth, then either the director or the writer will say, hey, I think we should cut this word, or we should cut this word and see if it fits. Or you're doing it and someone's just doing this primal scream like Dragon Ball Z. And, they scream a lot. Well, you got to make sure that scream, if you go, ah! And if the mouth is closed and you're still going, ah! And then it doesn't work. So you have to know, man, let me see that first before I do this, so that I can time it out, and then give it to you. Because you don't want to scream 20 times, because then you're shot for the session. So there's different things that you have to do for different genres. If it's mocap that I'm doing, then it's great, because then I know what I said in mocap, and all I have to do is, oh yeah, I remember when I said that. This is how I said it in the tones. All right, so we go back so it's different ways to do it, depending on the job and the genre. There's a lot more to this voice actor stuff than you thought, huh?
Of course. Yeah.
A lot of people, like I said, there's a lot of things that, a lot of technical things. That's why I say get training, get someone who can help you in the booth. Find out if there's, and in good classes, not classes just to say, hey, you want to be an actor? Come out here, $250 a day. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you have a good teacher, a good trainer, someone who's been in the business, someone who's doing it in the business, that can train you and wants to see you do well. So I think that's important.
Right.
Nice. Yeah, you've really provided contrast, because Brianna, this was her first voice work, and for you, you've done this a while, so.
Yeah, Brianna's the bomb though. For her to be able to, this is her first voice job. I mean,
yeah.
And she got handed a huge role that a lot of people, especially if you're whether you're a Final Fantasy fan or not, you're talking about the remake from something that was done in 1998, 1997. and she got handed a huge task, and I think she did an awesome job.
Amazing job.
Doing it. She stepped in and wore it out. It's not easy to play Aerith, especially with this sweet innocence and this flower girl, and then all of a sudden she's fighting, and then you find out she's an ancient. There's so many different levels to her character, and I thought she brought it.
Agreed.
Cody too. Cody's the same way.
Oh.
I mean, but Cody's a tremendous talent. Cody is a musician. Cody is an actor.
Yes.
Cody is an artist. People don't understand, this dude is one of the most multi-talented people that you'll ever see. Erica Lindbeck. There's so many people. Yuri Lowenthal. I mean, so many people involved with this game. Vic Chow. So many folks who Square Enix has. Austin. Oh my gosh. There's so many people that Square Enix hired for this job that are multi-talented and very good at what they do, and bring all of that artistry to their characters and to this project. That's why I think, for the English cast, they did such a great job. I haven't heard the Japanese full cast yet, but I know that they brought it too, because they set the precedence for us to come in and English dub.
Nice.
So sadly, we've reached the end of this conversation, but sort of like wrap things up. If it's okay with you, could you probably key us in on what are you working on, or where else can people find your work? What would you want to say to your fans in Southeast Asia?
Man, I got fans in Southeast Asia. I'm flattered.
I mean, we're fans, so.
I know. I was like, to me, that's just awesome. This is what I'll say. I'll say that some of the projects that I'm working on, I'm not allowed to say because I'm under contract to not say it, a non-disclosure agreement. Some of the stuff that, if you want to see my work, I guess go to imdb.com and you can see all of the things that I've done. I know that's how people research me, but people laugh because they say, "Hey man, what are you doing? What did you?" And I say, "I don't know. I'm working on this. I think I just found out that I was in Resident Evil Resistance, and I'm like, wait a minute, that wasn't what it was called when we were doing this. Yeah, I'm sorry, we had to change the name, and I'm like, what? If I'd have known I was Resident Evil, I would have changed this. And it's anyway. Long story short. So, and I don't like to brag about myself. I feel like I'm bragging about myself. People say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I know that's weird, but I just feel like, I'm bragging about myself. So I'll always say, hey, if you want to see what I'm doing or what my work, go to IMDb. You can see pretty much everything except for that bottom half of it, because that's not me. That's the white John Bentley, who is no longer with us, who was an unbelievable writer, director, actor. That's not me. They attached his to mine for some reason. They haven't changed it. But I would say go there and you can see everything that I'm doing or working on that can be released. And you can check it out. You can, internet's a wonderful thing where you can see stuff like that. But as far as fans in Southeast Asia, man, I'm flattered. I hope and pray that once this whole pandemic is done and when we get back to being able to travel and fly everywhere, that there's a convention that I can come out and say hey to everybody and just meet the fans and do autographs and just, say what's up and be in the midst of everyone, as opposed to, just, hey, how you doing? I know we're on Zoom, just make sure I can say hey to everybody, because it's flattering and honestly it's humbling that, we've got fans all over the world. That's a blessing to me.
Yes, and when that time comes, we'll welcome you with open arms. We got a lot of cons here, so.
Cool.
All right.
That will be very fun. Very fun.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for this great episode. You gave us a great insight into the world of voice acting as a whole.
Cool.
So,
thank you.
Yeah. So, for our audience, we'll catch you guys next time on IGN House Call. Bye.
See you later.